Chapter 1. The Judgment. The two pink lines on the plastic stick were not a promise. They were a verdict. The jury was the entire pack. The judge was a man she'd never met, and the sentence, she was certain, would be exile at best. Sasha's breath hitched, a ragged sound in the silence of her small, barren room. Her trembling hand left the test on the scarred dresser, as if it had burned her. In a pack of powerful primal shifters, she was a wolfess, a werewolf locked in human form, a creature of lesser status, a ghost in the machine of pack hierarchy. And a ghost did not break the most sacred of pack laws, conceiving a child without a mate. The father was a phantom, a secret she clutched to her chest like a shield. To name him was to sign his death warrant and strip herself of the last shred of dignity she possessed. But her body would soon betray her. The subtle curve of her belly was a time bomb, ticking down to her ruin. The door crashed open without warning. Her uncle, Carl, filled the frame, his face a thundercloud of disgust and perverse triumph. A beta with ambitions that festered in the shadow of the Alpha's power, he saw her not as family, but as a stain on his rising status. "The Alpha summons you," he growled, the words a death knell. He didn't wait for a reply, his hand closing around her upper arm like a manacle, yanking her into the hall. The walk to the manor was a gauntlet. Pack members emerged from their homes, their whispers sharp and cruel, carving into her. "Look at her." Carl's shame. A wolfess, thinking she can flout our laws? Perhaps she couldn't help it. Who would claim something so broken? The heat of 1,000 judgments seared her skin, but Sasha forced her chin up, her spine straight. She had endured a lifetime of this acid drizzle of contempt. She would endure this. But her child, the innocent life fluttering within her, would not. A fierce, primal determination, cold and sharp, crystallized in her heart. "No one is taking my baby." The grand doors of the throne room swung open, revealing a spectacle of power. The air was thick with the scent of old wood, polished silver, and the potent layered musk of dominant wolves. Council members lined the walls, their faces stern masks of tradition. And at the center, on a throne that was less a chair and more a statement of absolute authority, sat him, Alpha Vaughn, the Golden Alpha. He was younger than the story suggested, perhaps only a decade her senior, but his presence was an oppressive weight that filled the vast space. He wasn't a relic from old tale. He was modern sovereignty incarnate, dressed in a dark suit that cost more than her life's earnings, his posture relaxed, yet radiating lethal potential. His hair was the color of wheat under a summer sun, but his eyes were winter ice, crystalline blue and calculating, missing nothing. "My Alpha," Carl announced, with a sycophantic bow, shoving her forward into the open space before the dais. "I present my niece, Sasha." "The one who spits on our ancient laws." Sasha stumbled, her worn shoes slipping on the polished floor. Instinctively, she looked up to regain her balance, and her gaze collided with the Alpha's. The room plunged into a silence so profound she could hear the frantic hammering of her own heart. A rule so fundamental it was bone deep. One did not look directly at the Alpha without invitation. Vaughn didn't flinch. He didn't roar. He simply stilled. Those icy eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with an unnerving predatory curiosity. He leaned forward slightly, the movement fluid and controlled. "You stand accused of breaking pack law?" His voice was a low, resonant baritone that vibrated through the marble floor and into her bones. Deceptively calm. You carry a child without a mate. What do you say for yourself?" Sasha's mouth was desert dry. She swallowed, the sound audible in the hush. "It is true, my Alpha." The words were a whisper, but they held, clear and unbroken. "And the father?" The question was soft, almost a purr, but "I demand full banishment! Let the forests have her!" The room fell silent once more, all eyes fixed on the throne. Banishment! For a pregnant wolfess, it was a slow, cruel death sentence. Starvation, exposure, or worse, rogues. Vaughn rose. He unfolded to his full, imposing height, towering over everyone in the room. His gaze swept over Carl's smug, triumphant face, a flicker of pure disdain in his blue eyes, before it returned to Sasha. It lingered on the defiant set of her jaw, the terrified courage in her storm-gray eyes, the way her hands, now clenched into fists, rested protectively over her abdomen. "Fine," Vaughn said, his voice flat and final. Carl's smile was immediate, vicious, but Vaughn's next words sliced it clean off his face. "The child is Pack. It will not be punished for the mother's situation. She will remain under my roof. Until the birth, she may resume her service in my household." Relief, so sharp and sudden it was dizzying, washed over Sasha. Her knees nearly buckled. Not banishment, not yet. Carl sputtered, incoherent with rage. "Alpha, you can't be serious. To have such a disgrace under your roof, the insult to your authority, the smell of her alone—" "The matter is closed, Carl," Vaughn interrupted, his voice dropping into a low, thunderous growl that vibrated with alpha power. It was a sound that commanded obedience on a cellular level. Carl flinched back as if struck. Vaughn's eyes never left Sasha. "You will serve here. You and your child are under my protection." As a fuming Carl was forcibly ushered out by two stone-faced guards, Sasha dared one last glance at the Alpha. His expression was an unreadable mask, but for a fleeting, terrifying moment, she saw something in the depths of his winter-blue eyes that was not condemnation. It was something dark, intense, and unsettlingly primal, something that looked oddly, fiercely like possession. Chapter 2. The Gilded Cage. Sasha's new existence was a beautiful, terrifying paradox. She was a lowly servant, yet she lived under the direct, unyielding protection of the most powerful wolf in the territory. She was a walking scandal, yet she was utterly untouchable. She had been thrown into a gilded cage, and the keeper of the key watched her with an intensity that stole her breath. Mrs. Winters, the head housekeeper, whose face seemed permanently set in lines of stern disapproval, assigned her to the laundry caverns deep in the manor's underbelly. "You'll be out of sight here," the woman said, her voice clipped. "Don't expect special treatment." "Your condition changes nothing. You work until you can't yet." When she thought Sasha wasn't looking, her eyes would flicker with something that wasn't pity, but a grim understanding of the precariousness of Sasha's position. The Alpha's home was a world of terrifying splendor. Sunlight streamed through vast windows, gleaming on marble floors so polished she could see her own nervous reflection. Portraits of severe-faced ancestors with the same crystalline blue eyes as Vaughn watched her pass, their painted gazes seeming to judge her unworthiness. Every whispered echo, every scent of lemon polish and old money screamed that she did not belong. And then there were the other inhabitants of this cage. Luna Alara, the Alpha's mother, was a vision of frozen elegance. She moved through the halls like a queen, her platinum blonde hair coiled in an impossibly perfect chignon, not a single strand daring to stray. Her beauty was sharp and intimidating, her features carved from marble. Her gaze, when it briefly passed over Sasha, was so cold it felt like a physical slap, a dismissal so complete it was more insulting than hatred. Sasha learned of her swiftly. She's still Luna until the Alpha takes a mate. Helen, a kindly older maid, whispered as they folded sheets. And she has a reputation. Don't look her in the eye, dear. You'll turn to stone. Sasha tried to make herself a ghost, to blend into the tapestries and shadows. But the Alpha's gaze was a predator's, and it found her wherever she went. During a rare moment in the main hall, she felt the weight of his stare from the balcony above. She looked up against her better judgment and found him leaning against the railing, a crystal tumbler in hand, his eyes fixed on her. Not with the cold curiosity of the throne room, but with a deep, contemplative intensity that made her skin prickle. He was oddly, fiercely possessive of her, a woman he barely knew, and of the child everyone believed was another man's. The contradiction was a constant humming tension in the air. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Luna Alara descended upon the laundry room like a sudden frost, her presence causing every maid to freeze mid-motion. "Mrs. Winters," Alara's voice was melodic, yet each word was sharp enough to cut glass. A word about the new addition to the staff. She didn't even look at Sasha, speaking about her as if she were a piece of faulty equipment. "A Wolfess Vaughn," she had said to him later within Sasha's earshot, "among the household staff? It reeks of charity. What will our allies think when they visit? It undermines your authority, darling. It speaks of weakness." Vaughn's response from the other room had been a low, uncompromising rumble. "My authority is not so fragile, Mother." The decision is made. One afternoon, a crisis upstairs meant all hands were needed. The head laundress shoved a pile of fresh linens into Sasha's arms. "The Alpha's quarters. Nina's out sick. Be quick about it. He should be in meetings all day." A strange, nervous flutter, distinct from the baby's movements, took flight in Sasha's chest. His private space. The inner sanctum. She approached the heavy oak door at the end of the west wing corridor, a place that felt charged with his potent energy. She knocked softly. Once. Twice. No answer. Hesitantly, she pushed the door open. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. It was sparsely elegant, dominated by a large bed and a heavy oak desk. And then she heard it, a low, pain-filled growl that vibrated through the floorboards. Her heart leapt into her throat. There, in the corner, half hidden in shadow, was not the man, but the wolf. He was enormous, a beast of myth and muscle, his fur the color of spun gold. And he was hurt. A vicious, deep gash marred his powerful flank, dripping crimson onto the dark rug beneath him. He trembled not from fear, but from the immense effort of containing his pain. His head was raised, and in the dim light his eyes glowed with the same piercing, intelligent blue as Vaughn's. An Alpha could never, ever show weakness. This was a secret that could shatter his authority, invite challenges, and destabilize the entire pack. The wolf's lips pulled back from his teeth, emitting a rumbling growl that was a clear and deadly warning. "Stay back." Every instinct told her to flee, but the sight of the magnificent creature in such agony held her rooted. "You're hurt," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The fear receded, replaced by a calm, startling clarity. "I could fetch the doctor." Silently, a ferocious snarl ripped through the room, so full of rage and denial it rattled the pictures on the wall. "No one can No. The message was received, absolute and final. "I understand," she said, her voice softening into a soothing murmur. She moved slowly, keeping her movements predictable. "I promise, no one will hear of it from me." She found a well-stocked first aid kit in his ensuite bathroom. Approaching him was like approaching a lightning storm, all raw, dangerous power. She sank to her knees before him, her movements gentle and deliberate. She cleaned the wound, her touch firm yet soothing, applying antiseptic and a tight bandage. The great wolf watched her, his blazing blue eyes never leaving her face, his tension a live wire in the air. But gradually, as she worked, the terrifying growls subsided into ragged breaths. A strange, profound quiet settled between them, a connection forged in the intimacy of his vulnerability and her compassion. When she finished, she dared to reach out and stroke the thick fur between his ears. It was softer than she could have imagined. "You need to rest," she whispered. He huffed a warm breath against her hand, and for a heartbeat he leaned into her touch before drawing back, the proud Alpha once more. She left the room as silently as she had entered, her heart pounding for an entirely new reason. Later that day, Mrs. Winters summoned her to her office. The woman looked utterly bewildered, her stern demeanor cracked. "It seems your duties are changing," she said, staring at a note on her desk as if it were written in a foreign language. "The Alpha has requested you be reassigned." Effective immediately, she finally looked up, her gaze deeply confused. "You'll serve as his personal attendant." Sasha's cheeks flooded with heat, the memory of the wolf's fur under her fingers vivid and unsettling. But Mrs. Winters, I'm incompetent. I'm pregnant." A dry, almost helpless sound escaped the housekeeper's throat. "I made those points quite clear," she said, tapping the note. "He was insistent." Chapter 3. The Unraveling. Becoming the Alpha's personal attendant didn't just plunge Sasha into his world. It chained her to the rhythm of his breath, the tension in his shoulders, the slow, terrifying fracturing of his formidable control. Her days were a paradox of intimate service and glacial distance. She brought him his coffee, black, no sugar, and learned the precise angle he preferred his documents arranged on his vast mahogany desk. She existed in his orbit, a silent satellite, drawn into the gravitational pull of his intensifying, turbulent presence. The unraveling was subtle at first, a slight, almost imperceptible tightening around his eyes during pack meetings, dismissed as a headache. Then came the tremors. She saw it one morning as he reached for his pen, a fine, violent shudder in his right hand that he swiftly camouflaged by clenching his fist and burying it in his pocket. His scent, usually a clean, dominant aroma of alpine air and power, began to carry the faint, acrid tang of pain. He tried to hide it, of course, and Alpha shows no weakness. He'd dismiss her from his study abruptly, claiming a need for concentration, but she'd hear the ragged edge in his voice. Once she entered without knocking to find him braced against the fireplace mantel, his knuckles white, his body trembling with a cold sweat that plastered his shirt to his back. The look he shot her was pure, undiluted fury, not at her, but at his own failing body. Yet his protectiveness of her became a ferocious, all-consuming force. When a new, overly familiar delivery driver lingered too close, asking Sasha personal questions, Vaughn was across the courtyard in a blur of motion. He didn't speak. A low, continuous growl rumbled from his chest, a sound so primitive it made the air vibrate. The driver, a beta from a neighboring pack, paled and scrambled back to his truck without another word. Vaughn's gaze followed the vehicle until it disappeared, his body thrumming with a possessive energy that left Sasha breathless and confused. He began provisioning for her and the baby with a single-minded intensity that felt less like charity and more like a primal nesting instinct. It started with prenatal vitamins appearing on her bedside table. Then a stack of books on pregnancy and child care was left in her small sitting room. One afternoon, he simply stated, "We're going into town," and drove her to a boutique himself, ignoring her stammered protests. He watched her, his gaze hot and unwavering, as she tentatively touched the soft cashmere of a sweater. "You're gorgeous," he'd said, his voice a rough caress, his eyes fixed on the proud swell of her belly. The heat in his gaze wasn't gentlemanly admiration. It was raw, alpha desire. It felt real. It felt true. It stole the air from her lungs and sowed a dangerous, hopeful confusion in her soul. But the more fiercely he claimed her, the more rapidly his health decayed. The headaches became migraines that forced him to retreat into darkened rooms. The tremors worsened. The terrifying truth was a serpent coiling in her gut. His care was killing him. Desperate, she sought out her only living relative, her Aunt Rita. The meeting in a dusty, sun-bleached cafe was a disaster. Rita's hostility was a palpable wall. "Your mother?" Rita sneered, stirring her tea with a violent clink. "She made her choices. She paid for them. You're well on your way to doing the same. Don't drag up her ghost to justify your mistakes." But as Sasha left, heart sinking, she saw her, the blonde human woman from the park weeks before, watching from a beat-up sedan. As Sasha walked, the car crept along the curb. The window rolled down. "Please, you have to listen," the woman started, her face etched with urgency. Vaughn's driver, Marcus, was there in an instant. His move wasn't just interception, it was a threat. He slammed the woman back against her car door, his growl audible even from where Sasha stood. "She said leave her alone," he snarled. "Marcus, no!" Sasha cried, horrified as the woman crumpled to the pavement. "She's just a human." "Alpha's orders," Marcus said, his voice cold and final as he ushered Sasha into the packed vehicle. No exceptions. Back at the manor, a new, cold fury overrode her fear. She found Vaughn in his study, pale and sweating, trying to read a report through clearly blurred vision. The sight of his suffering, coupled with the violence done in his name, shattered her restraint. "The symptoms, your headaches, the tremors, the cold sweats," she began, her voice trembling but clear. "They're the same as my mother's before she died. Vaughn, this is serious. You're seeing a healer. Today." Right now, he tried to wave a dismissive hand, the gesture weak. "It's stress. Council negotiations. It's nothing." "It's not nothing!" she shouted, the emotion she'd bottled for weeks finally exploding. She crossed the room in 3 swift strides. He looked up, startled by her forcefulness. To stop his protests, to make him see, to transfer the terrifying truth from her soul to his, she did the only thing she could think of. She framed his face with her hands and crushed her lips to his. It was meant to be a demand, a punctuation mark. It exploded into a supernova. The kiss was not gentle. It was weeks of unspoken tension, of shared secrets in dark rooms, of possessive looks and desperate fear. It was a terrifying, profound connection snapping into place. He froze for a fraction of a second, before his arms banded around her, pulling her into his lap, his mouth moving against hers with a hunger that mirrored her own. It was a claiming, an answer, a homecoming. When they broke apart, gasping for air, the world had shifted. The air crackled. In his wide, stunned blue eyes, she saw the same cataclysmic longing and earth-shattering confusion that raged within her. "No more excuses," she whispered, her forehead resting against his. The door to the study swung open without warning. Luna Alara stood there, frozen for a heartbeat, her sharp eyes taking in the intimate scene. Sasha in Vaughn's lap, his arms around her, their faces flushed. Icy calculation instantly replaced her initial shock. "Sasha, darling," Alara said, her voice a silken threat coated in fake sweetness. "There you are. Wonderful news?" Her smile was a predator's grimace. "He's here." "Who?" Sasha asked, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, still echoing with the kiss. "Why, the father of your child," Alara announced, as if revealing the winner of a prize. She gestured to the hallway where a man stood awkwardly, a stranger with light brown hair and a bland, pleasant face that meant nothing to her. "He's come forward to claim you and his baby. His family is quite eager to make things right. You'll be leaving for his estate immediately." Chapter 4. The Broken Bond. The world didn't just shatter. It dissolved into a nightmare of chilling efficiency. The man, introduced as Trevor, a beta from some minor allied pack she'd never heard of, was a polite, empty vessel. He looked at her with a resigned obligation, his eyes devoid of any recognition or desire. "It's true," he murmured, his voice monotone, his gaze fixed somewhere over her shoulder. "The spring festival. We met. I had too much to drink. I'm sorry for my cowardice. I'm here to make things right." The words were clearly rehearsed, a script written by Luna Alara. It was a perfect, elegant, and devastating lie. "Pack your things, Sasha," Alara instructed, her brisk tone brooking no argument. She was already directing maids who swarmed into Sasha's room with empty boxes. "Your aunt and uncle have been informed. They're expecting you and Trevor. We'll host the mating ceremony here, of course, a delightful event to unite the packs." Each word was a nail in the coffin of Sasha's future. Numbness descended, a thick, cottony buffer against the horror. She was packed and ushered out like a piece of troublesome furniture. As she was led down the main staircase, she caught a glimpse through a half-open door. Vaughn was in his bed, deathly pale, drenched in sweat, his body racked by tremors. His mother stood over him, not with a healer's concern, but with the focused intensity of a warden, one hand on his brow, deliberately blocking his view of the hallway, of her departure. The last thread of hope snapped. Her heart didn't just break, it was pulverized. She wasn't taken to any estate. The car delivered her straight to the doorstep of her Uncle Carl's miserable house. Trevor mumbled a vague excuse about preparing his home and disappeared, his role in the charade complete. Carl's smug triumph was a toxic cloud. "The mighty Alpha's whore returned to the gutter where she belongs," he sneered, grabbing her arm and yanking her inside. "You'll stay here until the brat is born. Then you'll be mated to that idiot and be his problem to feed." That night, the numbness wore off, and the agony began. It wasn't emotional. It was profoundly, excruciatingly physical. A searing pain ripped through her chest, a feeling of being clawed open, of a vital organ being brutally torn from her body. She collapsed to the rough wooden floor of her old room, clutching her sternum, her sobs ragged and raw It felt like something essential to her very life was dying, withering inside her. Her Aunt Rita found her there, curled in a fetal position. For the first time, the woman's perpetual mask of cold disapproval cracked, revealing something ancient and haunted beneath. "Get up," Rita whispered, her own voice ragged with a pain that wasn't current but remembered. She tried to haul Sasha up, her hand surprisingly gentle. "It's the bond," she breathed, the words a confession. "What bond?" Sasha cried, tears streaming down her face. "What is happening to me?" Rita's face crumpled. "The mate bond," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Your mother, she didn't just die of a broken heart, girl. She died of a broken bond." The story spilled out, halting and painful. Sasha's father hadn't merely abandoned them, he had consciously, utterly rejected their mate bond. Her mother, a wolfess like Sasha, had fought the ensuing sickness for years, a daily agonizing battle she waged solely for her daughter's sake. But the rejection was a poison no strength could forever withstand. It had consumed her from the inside out. Luna Alara survived her mate's death, Sasha argued weakly, grasping for a counterpoint, thinking of Vaughn's father. "She was a full shifter of a powerful bloodline," Rita countered, her voice bitter, "and her bond was never rejected. It was severed by death, a clean cut. This, what your father did, what is happening to you now, it's a betrayal, a festering wound. It's different." She looked at Sasha, and the pity in her eyes was worse than her usual hostility. "This pain you feel, it's because your bond is being rejected." By the Alpha, Sasha recoiled as if scalded. "No, that's not possible. We're not mates. He can't be. The baby—" "Aren't you?" Rita asked, her voice softening to a near whisper. "Think. His absurd possessiveness, his instinct to protect and provide, the way you calm his wolf, the child, are you so sure it isn't his?" The memory of the spring festival, hazy with wine and grief, suddenly sharpened. She had been crying over her lot in life. A presence had found her, not Cale's timid, gentle comfort. This presence had been solid, powerful, silent. She remembered the scent of alpine air, the glimpse of golden hair in the moonlight, a strong arm around her, not asking, just taking her weight. She'd been too upset, too intoxicated to process it, and had assumed. The truth didn't just hit her, it detonated. Vaughn was her mate, he was the father, and he was dying because he thought she had willingly left him, because his wolf believed its chosen mate had rejected their sacred bond. His illness wasn't a mystery ailment, it was bonding sickness, and his mother, Luna Alara, to sever a connection she deemed unfit, had engineered this entire horrific charade. A new determination, cold, clear, and ferocious, incinerated Sasha's pain. The agony in her chest became a beacon, a pulling compass needle pointing directly toward its other half. She had to get to him. She had to claim him, now. She waited until the dead of night, when Carl's snoring rattled the walls and slipped out like a shadow. She ran toward the manor, her body aching, her soul screaming across the distance for its mate. The woods were dark, the path familiar and terrifying. Branches clawed at her clothes, but she felt nothing but the desperate, pulling need to reach him. Headlights cut through the darkness, a beat-up sedan skidding to a halt on the gravel road beside her, kicking up dust. The passenger window screeched down. It was the blonde woman, her face pale and fierce in the dashboard glow. "Get in if you want to save him," she yelled, shoving the door open. Sasha didn't hesitate. She fell into the passenger seat, Gasping for breath, the woman slammed the car into gear and sped toward the manor. "I'm Iris," she said, her eyes glued to the road. "You're Luna?" She spat the title like a curse. "She made a wish." "From a magician, a fey-touched monster named Adrian. She wished for you to be gone, for her son to be free of you so he could make a suitable match. Magic like his, it has to grant the wish, but it doesn't grant truth. It uses the easiest, most believable path. It wove a lie everyone would accept. A convenient, remorseful father. It's making Vaughn sick because his soul knows the truth even if the magic has clouded his mind and everyone else's." "A price?" Sasha asked, her blood turning to ice. "Always," Iris said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "The wisher pays with what they value most. For Alara, that's not her title or her wealth. It's her son's love. She just doesn't know it yet." They reached the manor's outer gate. Iris didn't stop. She slammed her hand on the horn, creating a relentless, shrieking distraction that had guards running toward the gatehouse. "Go!" Iris screamed. "Around the back! Now!" Sasha scrambled out and ran. As she rounded the corner, a servant's door flew open. Helen, the kindly maid, her face tight with fear, grabbed Sasha's arm and yanked her inside. "This way! Hurry! He's fading!" They flew through the darkened, silent kitchens and up the back stairways. The manor felt different, a tomb holding its breath. They reached the doors to the Alpha's chambers. Sasha didn't knock. She threw her weight against them, bursting into the room. The scene was one of grim vigil. Luna Alara was perched on the edge of the bed, wiping Vaughn's brow with a cloth, her face drawn not just with fear, but with a terrifying desperation. An elderly healer stood wringing his hands, useless. A loyal guard was poised by the door, his expression grim. "You!" Alara hissed, launching to her feet, her eyes flashing with pure, undiluted fury. "Get out! Get her out of here!" "Now," Sasha said, her voice not a shout, but a low, resonant command that echoed with a power she didn't know she possessed. She walked forward, her eyes locked on Vaughn's deathless, still form on the bed. He was gray, his breathing so shallow it was almost undetectable. "I'm his mate. I'm carrying the Alpha's air, and I am claiming him the healer." And the guards stared, stunned, their eyes widening at the proclamation. "Leave us!" Alara roared, her alpha power flooding the room, demanding obedience. The guard moved toward Sasha, but the healer grabbed his arm. "Luna, if there is any chance at all, we must take it. Look at him. He has minutes." "Out!" Alara's scream was raw, laced with a mother's primal fear and a tyrant's rage. Cowed, they fled, closing the doors behind them. Sasha ignored her. She climbed onto the massive bed, gathering Vaughn's limp, cold body into her arms. She cradled him against her chest, her pregnant belly pressed to his side. She pressed her forehead to his, her tears falling onto his parched lips. "I'm here, Vaughn," she whispered, the words a vow, a prayer, a claiming. "I didn't leave you. I would never leave you. You are my mate. This is our child, our son. Come back to me. Your child needs you. I need you." She poured every ounce of her love, her will, her soul into him. She didn't just say the words. She pushed them into him through their touch, envisioning their bond not as a broken thread, but as a brilliant, golden cable, willing it to reconnect, to surge with life, to heal them both. For a terrifying, eternal moment, nothing happened. Then a weak, thready pulse fluttered against her own. A faint echo from a great distance, then another, stronger. A warmth began to spread from her own chest into his, a golden light she felt rather than saw. Vaughn's body gave a massive, whole body shudder. A low, ragged, desperate breath rattled into his lungs, followed by another, deeper and clearer. His eyelids fluttered. The blue irises beneath were dim, clouded with the remnants of the magic, but they focused on her. "Sasha," he rasped, the voice a broken thing, but it was his. "I'm here," she sobbed, holding him tighter, raining kisses on his face, his hair, his lips. "I'm here." Over her shoulder, she saw Luna Alara. The woman had not moved. She stood, frozen, watching the life flood back into her son. She saw the way his hand weakly came up to clutch Sasha's arm, the way his eyes clung to her face with a dawning, profound love and absolute recognition that no magic could ever fake or erase. Alara had won. She had saved his physical life. But as she witnessed the unbreakable bond solidify before her eyes, she understood the cost. The price had been exacted in full. The love in her son's eyes was not for her. It would never be for her again. Her face became a mask of utter, devastating loss. She had not just lost a battle, she had lost her son forever.